Hey, I'm Sterling with Martin Marine. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about rebuilding a Mercury two-stroke carburetor. This is going to be the same for any motor from 1986 through 2006. This is going to be for the 6 horsepower motor, the 8, the 9.9, and the 15 horsepower motor. So just stay tuned and we're going to show you how it's done. Okay, so let's get started. So to complete this project today, you're going to need a can of carburetor spray, 11mm wrench, a 13mm wrench, and a number 2 screwdriver. You're also going to need the Mercury gasket kit that is part number 1395-9761-1. It's going to look like that. And that's going to give you all the gaskets and everything you need to rebuild this carburetor kit. Do note there's going to be a few extra parts left over that are made for other carburetors. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is there's usually a lot of dirt and stuff around the edges of this carburetor. I like to just take some spray and just kind of get some of that debris off the outside, just to kind of clean it up so it looks better. Just like that. Okay, now we're going to take our 13mm wrench and we're going to remove the bowl from the bottom. You're just going to go right on the top of this brass screw, turn it counterclockwise. Usually all you got to do is break it loose and you can turn it by finger. And that's where your jet is actually located, is in there. Okay, now we'll want to pick up the jet and put the nozzle on the spray can. And we're just going to put it right in the center of the bottom of this and just spray out. And that'll clear out the main jet on the carburetor. Okay, we'll just go ahead and set that to the side. Okay, for the next step, we're going to take our 11mm wrench and we're just going to turn counterclockwise again and break it loose. And then we're just going to unscrew this brass. And there's going to be a small spring in here when I open it up. So just be very careful not to lose that. As you can see, there's a small spring. I don't know if you can actually see that. But just set that to the side. Also, there's a small BB inside here, so be very careful not to lose that. Okay, when you're removing these 4 screws, do be careful. There's a large spring under here, so sometimes it'll shoot off like a rocket. So now we're just going to carefully remove this. And you're going to see a large spring in there, and you're going to want to set that to the side. Okay, I do see a little bit of trash in here, so we're going to want to take our carburetor spray and spray through the center of here, along through this little side passage. And also there's a little spot here that you can spray through. You just want to spray all these different areas out and make sure they're all nice and clear. That way when we put it back together, we're not going to have any debris in any of these holes. Alright, that's good. Now we can just set that to the side. Okay, for the next step, we're going to go ahead and remove the float. So just lift that straight up. And then we're going to lift this piece of brass up just like that, and there's going to be a small piece in here, right in here, that's going to fall out. So you're just going to turn it over, and it should just fall right out. If not, you might have to pick it out a little bit. Just be careful not to gouge anything, and remove your seal because we're going to be replacing that. Okay, now we're going to remove these 5 screws from the fuel pump. Okay, so we went ahead and removed all 5 of these number 2 head screws. This is the fuel pump side. So now we'll just kind of pull up on this whole assembly and it should pop off. Sometimes they're kind of stuck on there. Sometimes you can kind of lift up on this piece and it'll break loose. There we go. Okay, so this looks kind of dirty in here. It definitely has some residue. So I might hit this with a brush really lightly with some carburetor cleaner on it, and then I'll go to spray out all the different areas. Okay, so now I'm going to take my carburetor spray, and you're going to want to spray through all these different holes that you see through all these different ports, and make sure they're all free of debris. So we're going to go ahead and just spray some through all of these. And wherever you see this stuff coming out, you may want to hit it from the opposite side just to make sure it is free. Also on the bottom of this bowl, right down the center, you're going to see a small little tube. You're going to want to spray through that, along with just around it. And you got a vent right here that you're going to want to spray out. Pretty much just any little cavity you see, you're going to want to spray out to make sure there's nothing in there. Now we're just going to remove these 2 Phillips head screws from this top cover. Okay, so we've removed these 2 screws from this top cover, and we're just going to lift straight up. Should pop right off. When you do put this back together, you see this little area that's cut open. You want to make sure it's lined up with that area. And we're just going to spray the whole inside of this out really good and through any of the little passages we see. Okay, and for the next step, we're going to want to remove this fuel mixture screw. I did forget to mention earlier, you are going to need a flat tip screwdriver for this. So just counterclockwise. And there is a spring behind it, so be careful. Alright, should be able to do it by fingers. There's the spring. Okay, we'll just set that to the side, and we're just going to spray through here as well. Okay, and for the last thing that we have to take apart is the other side of this fuel pump assembly. Sometimes this can be stuck together pretty well, and you can take a flat tip screwdriver and push right through this slotted hole. It is going to damage the old gasket, but we're planning on replacing all those. So you're just going to push that apart, and you're going to see a spring in here. Make sure that's put in there correctly, and we're just going to spray all this out nice and clean and pull the old gaskets off. Okay, so first we're going to start by putting this top piece back on. Like I said, just make sure this gasket cutout is in the same area where you see this cutout on the carburetor. So we're just going to sit that on top. The top of this does say top on it. It doesn't matter which way it's turned, just to let you know. So we're just going to sit that on top just like that. And we're going to put both of the screws back. And all these gaskets go on dry, so don't put any oil on them or anything like that. All you want to do is just evenly tighten down on these gaskets until they're snug. And you just kind of want to go back and forth between the 2 screws so they go on nice and evenly. Okay, next we're going to reinsert our fuel mixture screw with the spring on there. It is very important that you don't over tighten this when you're reinstalling it. You're just going to want to screw it in until it barely stops. So we're going to do that. Just keep turning it until it barely stops. You're just hearing the spring load up. Okay, it stopped there. So I believe the starting spot for Mercury is 1.5 out. So we're going to do 1.5 spins out, and that's where you're going to want to start when you reinstall your carburetor for tuning it. Okay, next we're going to start reassembling our fuel pump. There are 2 gaskets that look pretty similar that go on this. Make sure you have the one that has the cutout that's kind of got a curve to it that matches this. Make sure you have the right gasket on there. And then we're just going to place it right on the top. You should feel these 2 little tabs fit right in there perfectly. Okay, so next we're going to be installing this gasket onto the fuel pump side. There's some little notches that are on there that line that up perfectly. And then we're going to take this thin gasket and we're going to lay it on top. This can be a little tricky to get assembled back, but you just kind of got to work with it and make sure everything's lining up. Just like that. I've done it quite a few times, so mine went on pretty smoothly. All my holes are matching up, so we're good there. And just make sure you don't let go of this or it will go flying. And we're just going to start reinserting all the screws. Okay, now we're going to need to start reassembling our bowl. I've got all these screws tightened down on the fuel pump. I kind of did a cross pattern like you're tightening lug nuts on a tire. That way it went on nice and even and got a good seal all the way around it. We're going to start off with this piece. We didn't pull this gasket off a minute ago, but we need to do that. Just go ahead and just pull that off. These are usually pretty clean, but always spray everything with carburetor cleaner. You can't use too much carburetor cleaner when cleaning a carb. So we're just going to clean that out. Just like that. Okay, now that we got all that cleaned out, we're going to go ahead and slide this piece in and put this gasket on top. Sometimes the edges like to curl up, so just be careful of that. Take your spring, set it back in there. Okay, now we're just going to try to line all this up. There it goes, just like that. Then we're just going to take our 4 screws and put them back in. Make sure to hold it down or this thing will shoot off as well. Just going to barely touch the screw down. And we're going to do kind of a cross motion with this when tightening these screws to make sure we get a good seal on everything. Just go down until it touches again. Okay, so next we want to start reinstalling our bowl. We're just going to lift this copper piece up again, and we're going to reinstall this small piece. Make sure the pointed end goes down. It should just fall in the hole, and we'll flip this right back. Then the bowl, make sure it's nice and clean before you put it back on. So we're going to give it one more little spray, just like that. We're going to slide that on. Next, you're going to want to go ahead and grab your gasket and put it around there. Make sure it's all seated around there, because these are known for leaking and causing problems. Okay, so we got that all on just like that, and we're going to go ahead and place our bowl back on. Just make sure it's going on right. Everything looks good. Okay. Now we're going to take our jet, and if you haven't pulled the old paper gasket off, you want to put the new one on. And we're just going to place that right on the bottom. And we're just going to snug that up finger tight, and then we're going to check and make sure everything's aligned well. Then we're going to take our 13mm wrench and just start tightening it up. And we're got to be careful with this because you can strip these out, but you want the gasket to set well. So, okay, so we're just torquing it down just a little bit like that. Okay, so now we're just going to drop our BB back in the hole. Take your new paper gasket and put it over this, and drop your new spring in there, just like that. And then we're just going to reinsert it in this hole. Start to finger tighten it. And take our 11mm wrench, and we're just going to snug this down. Don't go overboard with it, just put a little tiny torque on there. And I think that's pretty much it. Carburetor should be good to go. You're just going to want to go ahead and put it back on your motor, and also this kit comes with a new gasket that will go behind your carburetor when you go to mount it. 1.5 turns out is where you're going to want to start with this screw. So start there, and we'll make another video soon to show you how to do a carburetor adjustment. Hey, I just want to thank you for watching this week's episode of Martin Marine. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.